Welcome to Out There, live TV, life documentaries, and another amazing life story. Today I have the privilege of bringing to you the intricate, the amazing, and the layering life story of the wonderful, the beautiful Sian Elizabeth Faire.
It's great to be here today.
And thank you for the share. Let me just dive in here. Sian, you were born on the 7th of November 1972. You would know that, but our audience do not. Your first home was at 10 Markley Drive, South Woodham Ferrers, and Chelmsford in Essex.
I'm an Essex girl,
You are.
I'm an Essex girl.
And there we are. Let's deep dive. With the birth of your younger brother at the age of 3, the family moved to Thorpe Bay, where you attended your primary school. Yeah. And this basically is what started shaping your life as it does. So daughter to mother, Ismay Shirley Jenkins, and of course, who was born in Roath, Cardiff, a Cardiff girl, in Wales. And of course, daughter to mother, Ismay Shirley Jenkins, who was born in Roath, Cardiff, here in Wales. And you're a late baby. I mean, you joined life a little late in Mum's life, as Mum was 36 years of age, haven't you? And back in those days, that was considered quite, a late arrival, as we would say. And your dad, John Hallam Jenkins, and he was born in Fairwater, Cardiff, another Welsh lad. And brother Gareth Edward Jenkins, and of course you have your son. Let's always get your son in here with Nathan Medwin Faire. Oh, what a great name, eh? Medwin Faire. And of course, partner at this given point in time is Diego back in Gran Canaria, and that's something we'll touch on later in the story. At the age of 3, you moved from your first family home to what would be your permanent family home address until Mum moved out after 49 years. And that was 9 Bovinger Way. Is that correct?
Yep.
Bovinger Way. Thorpe Bay, South End on Sea, Essex again, Essex lass. There we are. But here's the thing. Let's start here. Let's start with this life chapter, which is Mum and Dad's version of love. Now, this chapter is quite technical because we really don't understand the version of love that we are receiving from our parents until we actually dive into the layering of it. And there were so many times, do you feel, in our research where there were so many insights and realizations that the version of love had a different shape to what you originally thought you were experiencing through your childhood.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that it's made me really see things differently to how I've spent the last 50 years thinking about it.
Wow. Let's go into this. I'm going to read this portion out, then we're going to dive into it, which is, Mum and Dad showed themselves to life as quite a formal husband and wife shape, who did not openly demonstrate their love to each other. There wasn't that kind of gushing feel to Mum and Dad. You recall rarely seeing or recognizing Mum and Dad sort of showing that physical love, that open love. And there was no share or hearing the words of "I love you" from Mum and Dad to each other. So there was quite a control there of those emotions in the home. You also mentioned that to hear laughing, outward belly laughing, was something that was silenced. It wasn't a volume of noise that you would hear in your home, to a point that you have no recollection of Mum and Dad, which effectively the two adults lived with each other, for all those decades, never really sharing what is that freedom of expression, freedom of joy is what we'd like to say. Your home emotional environment was critically controlled by extreme planning and organising by your mum and dad. And the side effect of this was, on many times, you've labelled yourself someone that you feel was a control freak. And you used that word many times in our research, which was, I am, Paul, a control freak. And that realization of using those words really has to grow in us to feel that we are someone that is at that place of controlling everything, and controlling the emotions. But for yourself, when you went through and realizing now, what are your thoughts now, do you feel, on those early memories of what for you was normal? And as you've said many times in the research, but the realization is there was no freedom for you to express, to laugh, to show off, because it wasn't there.
No.
And thinking about that now, how big of a cause and effect, that range of cause and effect on Sian as an adult now, what do you feel that is, how do you feel that has hindered you in your life?
I think one of the biggest things is how difficult it is for me to express emotions and talk about emotions, because I've hidden them for so many years that they're so deep down that they're hard for me to identify and feel.
Yeah.
Because they're so pushed down.
And that's quite a profound statement where you said, Paul, it's hard for me to identify, it's hard for me to feel. When we are born organically to feel emotions, to experience and recognize emotions. Now, I've known you, for many years, and I would have always boasted you as being someone that was a very expressive person. But yet we are seeing here that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've become very good over the years at is putting a face on and being potentially someone different in a very external audience.
Oh, wow.
An example would be when I used to teach fitness classes, and I absolutely hated standing at the front of the class teaching everyone. I did it because I was passionate about exercise and I wanted everyone to love exercise.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was putting a face on. I was an actress going into that room. I wasn't me. As soon as I went in and taught, I was a different person.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
But when you think about, Mum was a very staid person. She was a state school deputy head, and she gave that career up in order to be a stay-at-home mum, we could say. And also, Mum took pride in her religious beliefs, which you shared with her, which was your church every week. And it's something that you did voice in our research, is something that you enjoyed and you felt was a part of your life. Dad, very driven person, thrived in his career as an aircraft stress and strain engineer at, I need to be sure I get this right, which is De Havilland?
Yeah, De Havilland, yeah.
De Havilland, I don't say it as quick as what Sian does, but yeah. And of course, Dad went on to lecture and really did get to share his intelligence to audiences, something that he would have loved doing. For the most, though, Mum and Dad present themselves in the light to others that they were a very close, positive couple. But also we have this camouflage of control, of all the emotions being controlled. Organizing became the camouflage for not having to, openly show emotions as a husband and wife, Mum and Dad, we could say. And then thrown in the mix of this, of course, was, and I want to touch on this bit first before I go into, which was the extended family, a visit to Cardiff and things. In those days, Mum and Dad would have just seen what Mum and Dad were, and would have for yourself would have possibly been, well, that's my mother and father.
Yeah.
But now,
I think that was one of the things that obviously I grew up thinking that what I was experiencing, everyone else experienced as well. Because I knew nothing different, you have the assumption that that's how everyone else is growing up as well. And so when you start to realise that actually people have different experiences, it makes you think about how it's affected you.
As a child in this time, did you feel that you had to give more thought to what mom and dad were feeling than what you were feeling? So whatever you did, whatever actions you took, whatever results you created for yourself, did you feel that they were to support mom and dad's emotions rather than support your emotions?
I think I did everything that I was told to do, and I did everything as fully and as best as I could. But it did feel like it was as much for my parents as for me. I was doing what I was told to do.
And now here's the thing: our parents are there to steer us. They are there to add that value of, I'm going to say, sustainability as a child. So they bring that in. But for yourself, the realization here is that there wasn't freedom. There wasn't freedom for your choices, do you feel? Do you feel the choices were made to support mom and dad's outcome, their desires, rather than your own?
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, I generally sort of thought I thought I was doing it for me. I thought I was making my own decisions, but when I really did want to make decisions, I couldn't. And a very short example was I was a brownie, and brownies was on a non-swimming night, so brownies was fine. Guides was a swimming night. So guess who couldn't go to guides? Because it was swimming.
Wow.
And again, like we talked about church, and we stopped going to church because of swimming.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't have the full choices because they had to fit within other boundaries, constraints.
I mean, I'm not seeing any choices here. What I'm seeing is that you live in an ecosystem where you have to flow with what your parents want for you. Now, here's the thing. Let's think about these layers. Some will say, well, that's good parenting. But then you think about the outcome of this 51 years later, is that, Sian, you lived in a home where, actually it wasn't just a home, you lived in an ecosystem of life where every decision was made for you. Then how do you grow an immune system to your own decision making? How do you become shaped in life if every decision that you are living in doesn't come from your desire, your mind, your goals in life? Our children come with their own agenda. We have to get out of the way on times. You were never allowed your own agenda.
Yeah, one of the things, if I look at my son and for instance, some of his friends, my son's been quite good at sticking with things for an amount of time. So he wanted to play the piano for a little while, and so we bought him an electronic keyboard so that he could play, practice. He had lessons, and then after about a year, he decided that he didn't enjoy it, and so we let him stop. Some of his friends, he's got one of his friends, he knows that anything he does, he's going to quit And that's the terminology my son uses, that he knows he's going to quit it within weeks or months. And that's not giving it enough chance. So as a parent, you need to encourage them to get over that. You need to like create a habit.
There is a difference in support and controlling. And you know, and why we're going there again, for many of you watching this video, you may feel that it wasn't that extreme. But there are, when a life is camouflaged in the control that it was in your life, in your childhood, it is a form of trauma, because it then prevents growth in certain layers of emotional growth that have had a huge cause and effect, which you will cover in the episodes coming in, of a huge cause and effect. In what is your personal worth, your success in life, we could say. And effectively, you know, what we're realizing is that there were huge gaps in that for you later in life.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to just come a little further into this, is that there were times also where, you know, when you get Christmas and birthdays, and when you experience the opportunity to celebrate gifts, celebrate the presents you have, but there was also a lot of control around any form of excitement, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were never, well, you know, we were never treated very extravagantly, although we did have nice holidays, which a lot of people didn't have, like in the 80s. We did have nice holidays, but yeah, we were very reserved. We weren't outwardly allowed to like go, hey, look at me, which is probably why I don't like going, hey, look at me now.
Yeah, there it is. And it's important to register this, is that, again, seemingly they were emotions that were held back. There was that control level there that, again, would have seemingly been nothing to the outside world, but for yourself, you were living it and stepping into it every day.
But I wasn't aware of it.
Yes.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why we do that. That's why we are doing this life story. It's unfolding those layers of, I'm going to say, you know, emotional control, life control, doing control, the comparison that you went through where you were measured against your first cousin always.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, suddenly you become the daughter that's not good enough because they're measuring you against a relative that they feel you should be better, equal, or more than.
And even when I was, it was never good enough.
And there you go. You know, how many of us do go through life feeling that we've never been good enough, that we're not good enough? And this is exactly where, you know, this was the foundation that you were brought up with. Let me go a little more here, is that expressing free emotion as a child in a very conservative and emotionally controlled home was not considered a positive, okay? You have memories of your grandmother visiting every birthday. Let's just touch on that. What did that feel like? So someone has come, did she make a fuss?
She was very old-fashioned. So she would have been 35 years older than my mum.
Okay.
So, but she had like she was born in 1901, and so like she had more children. So my mum had older brothers and sisters as well as one younger, and so she was very strict, very formal. Again, it was the one time in a year that she would come and visit us. So in that sense, it was very special because all the rest of the time, if we saw her, we came to Cardiff, which was, by the way, coming home. So even as a child living in Essex, home was Cardiff, and that is really important because I do feel very Welsh, even though I unfortunately wasn't born in Wales. But yeah, I mean, she was. I don't remember it being very lovey-dovey, very...
Let me ask you, what I feel is probably one of the most important questions of this era of your time is that, what did it feel like to show off as a child? Do you feel this was an embarrassment, or did you feel free?
To be honest, I'm not even really sure that I ever really did show off. It was always very hidden. It was always very reserved. So there was no freedom to show off. If I was good at something, it was always hidden.
Oh, wow.
So
if you were good at a particular something, they would hide that exception from others, or you weren't allowed to express how good you were at that?
So I remember, like, one time we had a school swimming gala because we had an outdoor pool at the school that I was primary school, and there was a race between the fastest girl in my class and the fastest girl in the other class. And obviously I was the fastest girl in my class, and the girl in the other class was nowhere near as fast as me, because we swam together. We knew, we knew if it was a fair race, who'd win. And the teacher for the other class, to make it a fair race, gave the girl a head start.
Okay. By
about half a length. He wouldn't let me start until she'd got halfway along the pool. It was a short pool. It was a very short pool because it was like a school pool, but he wanted her to win, so he held me back enough that it was going to be like pretty much impossible for me to catch her.
And do you feel that was the story throughout that early part of your life where your parents held you back? People held you back held you back in such a way where you didn't get that freedom to be, to be more than what you could have been. You were always succeeding to match what dad wanted, mom wanted, this coach wanted, this event wanted. Where were you allowed to fail? Where were you allowed to do something wrong? Where were you allowed to actually mess up at that age in your life?
Yeah.
Was there room for any of those opportunities to say, well, I don't have to be the best?
Definitely in primary school, definitely not. And that then became an issue in secondary school, where all of a sudden I was pitched with.
So in primary school, at this young age, you have already been shaped or have been put in a place where you have to achieve. Yeah. Otherwise, you get measured against who would be your cousin that your parents seem to look at as being the best version of what a child could be. Or you effectively are not rewarded with mom and dad's, we could say, achieving love if you don't achieve. Yeah. Did you feel that you had to always push for results for them, not for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't really aware in primary school. I just did everything I was told to do.
There we go. There we go again. Everything that you were told to do. And that doesn't mean, let's go backpedal a little, and it's important. Our parents are there to bring a stabilizing in our life where they're there to steer and guide. But it's very different when your parents are searching for their shortfalls in their daughter's achievements. Because that's what would have been going on there, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think I felt like my parents gave me opportunities that they potentially didn't have.
What did it feel like to lose a race? Did you ever lose?
Yeah, when I, primary school, probably not, because like it was really before I started swimming properly. Because I joined the swimming club age 10, so really it was a bit later that I was much more aware, because I was like traveling around the country swimming. But it was like, in any sport, it's about like getting personal bests.
Whether your personal best or Dad's personal best, would you win in for you, or were you winning for Dad? And we've gone ahead of ourselves a little here, and we have, and this is okay. Because if I pull us back in and, go back to, I'm going to go right back to the age of 4, where you were introduced to the recorder and the piano, and then at 7, the piano. Now, you also, in our research there, you made it very clear, Paul, I wasn't really a musical person at that time. You were in strict, we could say, practice lessons. It's something you had to do a lot of. When we think about this, it's like you also played at music festivals, but also realizing this made your parents happy, not you. This isn't a finger point here. We're unfolding the realizations of how intense those early years were in your life, and how then they shaped out in the latter part of your life. It's important for us to recognize this, that our environment, the early part of your mind, whilst it made you successful academically, there were big chunks missing. Let's just go and just say, at this young age, you were exposed to responsibilities of quite a high nature, which is, you're not just playing the piano, you're at festivals. You're not just playing the recorder, you've got to play in a particular way, the way the mom would want you to. Thinking of those responsibilities, how do you feel, do you feel this was the start of what was your journey to win for love?
I think when I look at the piano, the reason that I didn't enjoy the piano, and actually it's actually one of the reasons that my son has given it up, and maybe that's why I wasn't actually, when he told me why, I didn't try and stop him. So I never liked people hearing me play. Wow. Which, like, that is, like, that then, it's like, well, why would you play something? I know a lot of people play music for their own enjoyment, but part of it is also letting other people enjoy it. And I didn't like people hearing me play.
Now that is in itself, think about that. You playing a piano, which is a musical instrument, be heard and physically watch someone play. But then for yourself, there was an uncomfortable unease of that, which means that there must have been, and I'm just not putting words in here, but I want us just to shape this out. There must have been then stress behind learning the piano, learning to play the piano, stress in your performance, in your practice, in everything that then become related to that musical instrument.
Yeah, but then that also played out in my swimming later, because I didn't like swimming galas, because people would be looking at me when you're racing, when you're standing at the front of the blocks. Mm-hmm. You watch it on the Olympics, and they turn up and they're waving there and everything. I just wanted to die. I just wanted to, don't look at me. I want to be invisible. Wow. I much preferred the training where I was more invisible, and I was pushing myself, the dedication, the determination, but the actual performance, I hate.
Did you want to? Let's just touch on this briefly. It's like, when we are looking to be invisible, it's that we are wanting not to be measured, not to be criticized, not to be effectively fearing performance. That generally what comes from that place of wanting to be invisible. So, during those times, there was a lot of intensity in expectation, in dad's expectation of mom's expectation of you. So we then, because of when we become measured in that way by the people who love us, then we don't wish to participate in that measure. Do you see the layering here? Do you see how that effectively is starting to play out already, where you're already starting to hide in your life from your performance? Does that make sense there?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I hated anything that made me stick out, so like one of the things, like I did some massive achievements. I did my grade 5 theory of music when I was 10, and that was at the time they said it was equivalent to an O level, and I passed it at age 10. And
is that an achievement at age 10, or is that you've been put into a position where you have to achieve at the age of 10?
So the good thing about theory is it's just a written exam. So I did grades 1 to 4 in 4 terms because I just enjoyed it. I was just going like through the book, did all the exercises, went and did the exam and passed. Grade 5 was a bit harder because, like I say, it is, it's a tough exam, and so it took me a lot longer to study for it. But I still remember going to where the exams were held, and the majority of people take grade 5 theory because you need to have passed grade 5 theory of music to take your grade 6 exams.
Okay.
So like if you want to play the piano, if you want your grade 6 piano, your grade 6 clarinet, your grade 6 violin, whatever musical instrument, you can't get that exam without your grade 5 theory. So the majority were people probably age 15, 16 that were having to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm still not very tall, but I was probably really little, and they kept trying to send me back to the grade 1 room because they couldn't believe that a 10-year-old was taking grade 5. I took it and I passed it, and
But I'm going to take us back a little, and only 2 years, because at the age of 8, at the age of 8 now, I mean, you'd really mastered the maturity of emotional control. At the age of 8, you were starting to, I'm going to say, season into, effectively, and I'm going to use the word conditioned, into being a performing child. So everything about what you did was performance, where there's the swimming that we talk about later, and all of the other things. You became a child that had to perform, had to succeed, had to be the best at everything, is where we are. And then also, what we generally, at the age of 8, that child is in their full range of imagination. Your imagination was effectively chosen for you, because you were expected. Now, this doesn't mean that, let's be clear here. We don't want to paint a picture of sheer harshness, but we are unfolding the layers here of your life story. And at the age of 8, you hadn't quite mastered the freedom of your imagination, where most 8-year-olds would be, because yours was performance. And having to be good at everything you did. When we think about that, it's like a version of love for yourself in that part of your life is, if I do well, then I get loved. If I perform well, I get loved. If I do everything that's asked of me, I get loved. That is a very different experience to an 8-year-old that lives in imagination, as I did. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I say, because I knew no different, I accepted it. I'm aware that my brother had a lot more freedom. he didn't have to do all the different things that I did. He was able, although he learnt the piano, he was able to give it up.
How is that? I mean, how did you, I mean, what, thinking about it now, because everything that the measures we are looking at back then in that early part of your childhood is of course, you're bringing your maturity into now, well, Paul, this is how it feels. So, and we're bringing that up-to-date feeling of it. So when you think about that now, you had to fulfill. So why was there a different layering, do you feel, for you and your brother?
My brother was never compared to anyone in the way I was. We did nickname him in later years. I'll do the nice version was Golden Boy Gareth. The boy wasn't always boy, but we even laughed and joked that we bought a GBG, which is Great Britain Guernsey car sticker, because it was GBG, and there's some coaches that are Golden Boy coaches, and we just used to laugh about it because he was a golden child.
Do you feel you were in charge somewhat of your mother and father's happiness with your outcomes? Responsible. So you were responsible for your mother and father's happiness depending on your results, regardless of what that achievement was.
I think although I wasn't aware of it, I think I probably was, because they were seeing their success. If I was successful, they were successful.
There we are. And let me add a little more to this. Ballet, tap dance, modern dance, from the age of 3 to 12, you exceeded in these disciplines, reaching modern dance national competition in London. Yeah. You know, some people will say, you know, it's like, wow, what an achieving child. But also, let's be clear here, at this age, there's also an unachieving child, because the freedom to be a child hasn't been there. There's been elements. You know, failure was never an option for you during this age. Bear in mind that we are aged between 3 and 12. Failure was never an option. You had only one outcome sold to you by your parents, which was high achiever. The stress of that. Most business people suffer in the stress of achieving. You're already seasoned to it between the age of 3 and 12. Thinking about that now, as you are in this day in life, what's your thoughts on having to be that person? What do you feel you missed out on?
I think, so like the way that I always looked at it was, obviously I did experience things because, like, you know, dance and the music and the swimming and everything. So I experienced a lot, and I learnt a lot. I learnt a lot about dedication, determination, you know, and yeah, you know, I wasn't always aware of stress. Yeah. Really. I was just constantly pushing forwards. You talked about determination. Yeah. But the range of determination that was presented to you was a very mature range of determination compared to the 12-year-old standing by the side of you, or the average 12-year-old person in that life, in a life. There's a different push. You know, the realization here is that whilst Sian lived in a home that seemed very driven, seemed very together, the realization is that the shape of home you lived in was so restricted and so determined in all ways that you had to fall in line with that determination, which was called achievement, was surrounded by achievement.
before we finish this episode, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you feel in those early years that we have touched on in this episode that you were given the freedom to be the child that an average free child gets to be? Did you feel that freedom was there for you?
I wasn't even aware that there was anything else.
Wow. And that line, many people could say, well, that's for most children. But there wasn't an ecosystem where you remember, there wasn't a memory where you remember just freely doing what you wanted to do.
No, I mean, I just thought I wanted to do what my parents wanted me to do. So I never questioned it. I never thought about like going, no, I'm not going to do this. Oh my God, no. So
wow, you weren't given that choice to say no.
No, there was never, we'll touch on sort of that again in the future, even as an adult, to say I don't want to do something to my parents was pretty much impossible.
Wow, and then you become addicted to generosity in life because you're having to do always. And here we are coming to the end of episode 1. And we're going to be coming back to you with episode 2 as we dive into, of course, Sian Elizabeth Faire's amazing, intricate and technical life story. Come back with us on episode 2.